Before every single study session, top students ask themselves one question. Just one. It takes less than 5 seconds to ask, but it changes everything about how the next hour goes. Most students skip it completely. They sit down, open a book, and just start. No plan, no direction, just motion. And that one missing question is the difference between an hour that actually builds knowledge and an hour that just feels like effort. So what's the question? What do I already know about this? That's it. 5 words. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll understand why this tiny question is more powerful than any note-taking system, any highlighter color, any study app you've ever downloaded.
Why almost nobody asks it? Here's what happens for most people. You sit down to study. You open the textbook or your notes to wherever you left off, and you start reading. No pause, no check-in, just straight into consumption mode. It feels efficient. You're moving, you're covering material, the pages are turning. But here's the problem. You have no idea what you actually knew before you started. So when you finish that hour, you have no way to tell what you learned versus what you just reread for the 5th time. It all blurs together into a vague feeling of, yeah, I studied. That feeling is dangerous because it feels identical whether you actually gained something or gained nothing at all. Top students avoid this trap with one move. Before they open anything, they stop and ask what they already know. And that single pause changes the entire session. What this question actually does, when you ask yourself what you already know before you start, you're doing something most students never do. You're testing yourself before you've even begun. You're forcing your brain to search its own memory, pull out whatever's already there, and lay it on the table. This does 2 things at once. First, it shows you exactly where your knowledge is solid, so you don't waste time rereading things you've already got locked in. Second, and more importantly, it shows you exactly where the gaps are, the specific spots where your brain came up empty. Those gaps are the entire point of the study session. Everything else is just confirmation. Think about it like a doctor doing a checkup. They don't just run every test on every patient blindly. They ask questions first, figure out where the actual problem might be, and then focus the exam there. Most students study like they're running every test on a perfectly healthy patient, wasting time confirming things that were never broken in the first place.
The 5-second version. Here's exactly how to do this before your next study session. Close your eyes for a second, or just stare at a blank wall, and ask yourself, what do I remember about this topic already? Don't look at your notes, don't cheat, just pull whatever comes to mind, even if it's messy, even if it's incomplete. Say it out loud, or better, write it down in a few quick lines. It doesn't need to be organized, it just needs to be honest. Then, and only then, open your notes or textbook. Now, you're not reading blindly. You're reading with a target. You're specifically looking for the parts you missed, the parts that surprise you, the parts where what you wrote down doesn't match what's actually true. This flips the entire structure of studying. Instead of your notes being the main event, they become a checklist. You're not consuming information anymore, you're verifying it. Why this beats basically everything else? I know what you're thinking. This sounds too simple to matter. But here's the thing. Most powerful study techniques are simple. The Feynman technique is just explain it in plain words. Spaced repetition is just come back to it later instead of all at once. Active recall is just try to remember before you check. None of these are complicated. What separates top students isn't secret knowledge. It's that they actually do the simple thing instead of skipping straight to the comfortable thing. Rereading is comfortable. Highlighting is comfortable. Passive listening in class is comfortable. Asking yourself a question you might not know the answer to? That's uncomfortable. It exposes what you don't know before you're ready to be exposed. That's exactly why most people avoid it, and exactly why it works. When your brain has to reach for an answer and comes up short, it flags that information as urgent, important, worth holding on to. That's not a metaphor. That's actually how memory prioritization works.
Struggling to recall something and failing is one of the strongest signals you can send your brain that this information matters. Passive rereading sends the opposite signal. This is already familiar. No need to prioritize it, which is exactly backwards from what you
Real
want.
difference you'll notice fast. Try this for 1 week. Before every study session, no matter the subject, pause and ask what you already know. Write it down fast, messy, whatever comes out. Then open your material and hunt specifically for what you missed. You'll notice 2 things almost immediately. First, your study sessions get shorter because you stop spending time rereading things you already understood. Second, you start remembering more because every session is now built around your actual gaps instead of just moving through pages in order. This also solves something else that quietly wrecks a lot of study time: not knowing where to start. When you sit down with a huge chapter or a messy pile of notes, it's overwhelming, and that overwhelm is often what leads to procrastination in the first place. Asking what you already know gives you an instant starting point. You're not staring at a wall of information anymore. You're staring at a short list of specific gaps, and specific gaps are a lot less intimidating than an entire subject.
The mindset shift underneath it all, here's what this question really does underneath the surface. It changes your goal. Most students walk into a study session with the goal of finishing something, a chapter, a set of notes, a video. But finishing isn't the same as learning. You can finish reading an entire textbook and remember almost none of it. When you start with "what do I already know?", your goal quietly shifts from finishing to filling gaps. And filling a gap is a completely different task than reading a page. It's active, it's specific, it has a clear endpoint. Because once the gap is filled, you actually know you're done with that piece, instead of just assuming you're done because you turned the last page.
Try it tonight. Before you open anything tonight, stop. Pick whatever you're about to study. Ask yourself what you already know about it, out loud or on paper. No peeking. Then open your material and go straight for the parts that don't match what you just said. That's the entire system. 5 seconds of asking followed by studying that actually has a direction. It's the smallest change you can make, and it might be the one that finally makes your study time feel like it's going somewhere, instead of just filling time. If this gave you something to try tonight, hit like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, what's the first topic you're going to ask yourself about?